I think I would rather give opportunity to as many as possible. I
love
would
that.
also
I
like
love
to be in a position to, with Lisa's help or others that she might recommend, how do we help people get certified? How do we make it easier for them?
Yeah.
And if there's a way to do that, then I think that we're providing even more service.
Absolutely.
Does it annoy anybody that I play with my glasses? I realized that today that I do that all
Do
the
you?
time.
I haven't noticed.
I do.
I just take them off once we start talking because I don't need the glasses to see.
All right, cool.
Ready, guys?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, action.
Hey, Maria.
Hey, Lisa.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am good. I'm excited about our day. It's Friday. You know what that means? The
It's the
diversity,
diversity
duo.
duo.
Let's do this. So, Maria, today we have a gentleman joining us. His name is Rich Napolitano. He is from CommonWealth Purchasing Group right here in Boston. I was first introduced to Rich about almost a year ago today, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that funny? So
Absolutely.
Rich picked up the phone. He called. He started a conversation with me about supplier diversity, and what would a supplier diversity program look like for a GPO.
Oh, wow.
So very exciting. I've been dying for you two to meet each other, so I'm really excited about this. So I'm going to let him give a little background on himself, but here is Rich Napolitano.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you, Rich.
You too. You too. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I called Lisa about a year ago, right around this time. I was down in Atlanta
That's
at
right.
the time at a conference with some colleagues of mine and got a recommendation from a very close friend of both of ours,
Yep.
who unfortunately just passed away
Yeah.
over the last week.
Sorry to hear
Phil
that.
Johnston, who is a legend here in Massachusetts.
He sure is. Right here in
Especially when
Marshfield, too.
Especially when it comes to community health centers.
That's
That's
right.
right. He's from Marshfield as well. So
Yep.
this is timely. So Phil had recommended that I speak to Lisa about my desire to create a supplier diversity program for our group purchasing organization. Our group purchasing organization is about 27 years old. It's affiliated with the Mass League of Community Health Centers. It's got a national focus. We have about 875 members right now. Every health center in Massachusetts and most of the health centers in New England are our members. But as I said, we're national now. We reach out to hundreds of health centers across the country. We have at least one member in every state, which is kind of cool.
Very cool.
And, one of the things I think that we've been lacking is having a true supplier diversity effort and making it available to our members to have access to diverse suppliers.
I love that.
We work with diverse suppliers,
Yep.
but not many.
Okay.
And we know that some of our members across the country work with diverse suppliers, but we don't know yet if they're part of our vendor network. So that's one of the goals of this program, is to get some of those vendors onto our vendor network, which is about 90 right now, 85 to 90 direct contracts with vendors across the country in all different spend categories. But now with with the supplier diversity program that we're going to be launching, or we're in the process of launching, I expect that we're going to have a lot more choices for our members to choose from when it comes
Absolutely.
to diverse suppliers.
Yeah, really one of the most exciting projects I've worked on. And he thinks I just say that just because he's my client.
She says it to me all the time, Rich. She
Well,
does.
It's impactful, right? So, and for those that are listening, what is a GPO? It's a group purchasing organization.
Right.
And that means that there are members and there are vendors. So what Rich's organization does is he puts in place scalable contracts that offer savings and ease of purchase. So the member base is able to pick up the phone and call out to these vendors, and they don't have to worry about being a small organization, small community health center, because they're able to work within a collective bargaining group, right? So what Rich does is he negotiates these contracts, or he and his team negotiate these contracts on behalf of all 875 members. It's pretty neat, right? So if you consider the reach that that does, and when we convert that over to this being community health centers, we're really talking about an economic impact that is going directly back to the communities in which his members serve. Amazing. I've been excited about this since he first called me. So, and I want to talk much more about all of that and CPG, but I'd love to know a little bit more about you, about your education. How did you
Yes.
get into community health centers? And I know we all want to talk about NCAA.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, with March Madness just ending.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, I grew up here in Massachusetts, was born in Boston. My folks moved out to the Merrimack Valley when I was young. Grew up in Andover, Massachusetts.
Beautiful.
The oldest of three. Went to college up in Vermont at St. Michael's College. Got my master's there as well. Started my career in student affairs, actually.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was an assistant dean of students at a school in New York, in Albany, New York, and eventually got into working at nonprofits. Ran an adult home for a place called the Center for the Disabled in Albany, New York. And that's where I first fell into fundraising and community relations work. I did that for the majority of my career.
Wow.
And it's got to be about 12 years ago now, I was in the process of looking for a new role. My son had just gone through a cancer diagnosis, my youngest, and I had taken some time off in between positions. And when he was fully in remission, I went back to the well and looking for a job, and I ended up at Greater Lawrence Family Health Center. Never knew anything about health centers at that point, and was working in development and marketing, rebuilding their program, got into legislative affairs, and eventually was doing more operational work, strategic planning type stuff, a lot of that stuff. And I was there for about 9 years. Left there a couple of years ago and ended up at the Mass League of Community Health Centers. So I had my hand still in health centers, but just from a different lens.
Yep.
You know, I wasn't working on the front lines at one of our health centers, which are just phenomenal places. I mean,
Yeah.
we have 52 of them, I believe, now in Massachusetts. One of the first ever was founded here in Massachusetts on Columbia Point.
Interesting.
And, you know, we it's been a great career move for me. And working at a GPO that helps service community health centers and provide cost savings, expense reduction, it only helps create access for more patients,
Right.
and helps them achieve better bottom lines, which is a really crucial time period right now for health centers.
It is. You know, I'm listening to you talking, and you mentioned Columbia Point, and I started my professional career in Columbia Point when the developer CMJ Management took over Columbia Point and turned into Harbor Point.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
hired by them, and I stayed with this company like for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's funny. It says, he said Columbia Point. This is amazing. I love that community. I really did. So I know that to me it's so interesting that you're part of this GPO, and that you want to develop and implement a supply diversity program, because that's, I breathe it and eat it and think about it 24 hours a day. So what is your why to create this program now? What is your why?
Well, first of all, I think it's the right thing to do.
I love that.
You
Love
know,
that.
I mean, we want to be able to create access not only for our patients and that go to our community health centers, but we also want to create access for the businesses in those communities. Really important. It's important to me. It's important to the Mass League of Community Health Centers, which I'm part of. It definitely meets our mission and the community health center mission and movement. So it makes a lot of sense in that regard. And it's also helping small businesses. It's not, it's definitely focused on creating opportunities for minority-owned MBEs, minority-owned businesses, small businesses, women-owned businesses,
Right.
veteran-owned. So those are the things that we're focused on. We know that some of our major vendors and suppliers also work with within their structure, tier 2 or vendors that are diverse suppliers also. But we just haven't done a good job of tracking that
Right.
and trying to figure out who those people are. So then we can promote that with our members.
That's
And then in
amazing.
turn, I think it's going to come back to the communities that we serve.
That's an incredible answer. Thank you for that. Exactly what I was looking for. Thank you, Rich.
Well, I think one of the amazing parts is that, again, it's that impact. And when you consider what a community center is, a community health center, what they do, who they're serving, it is the same people that they employ, which should be the same people that will be suppliers. And this just creates this ecosystem that sits around each one of these community health centers. It's just amazing. And this is how Rich introduced right out of the gate to me, which was really appealing for me, right? Because you and I talk a lot about supplier diversity every single day. But to hear somebody have, and Rich, I think, having 875 community members allows the impact to be multiplied over and over again, because it's not something, Rich, this might have more impact specifically in Massachusetts as we roll out to the 52 and New York and Pennsylvania, but ultimately to cross the country with a similar program that's crowdfunding, crowdsourced, same program that's crowdsourced. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that looks like and the initiative to share data from community center to community center?
Not all 875 of our members are working with only CPG vendors. They're working with vendors that we're not aware of yet, and it would be a good thing for us to be aware of, but it's also an opportunity for us to collect that spend data, collect that data from them, who those people are, who those small businesses and minority-owned businesses are, and then we can share that out to the rest of the membership. So that, it's kind of an exponential effect that it's going to have with our membership base. And that's really, I think that's the way I understand it to be. It also gives our vendors an opportunity to supply information to us through this platform as well, and include with that in that platform data that they can give to us that helps us as well. We can aggregate spend, we can pull things together. We might be able to, that gives us more leverage in terms of contract negotiations, hopefully in the future.
Yes.
So there's a lot of pluses to it. Can't see any minuses, to be quite honest with you.
Neither do I.
It's really when I think about it, and I take the 360 on how do I think about from the member's perception, from the vendor perception, and from CPG perception. And I have this unique place of getting to sit and watch all. There is no negative to this that I still have yet to hear or see. When I think from the member perspective, scalability and everything about a GPO, scalability, right? We can definitely dive deep into the procurement of how immersed in business and procurement methodology a GPO sits, and to be able to amplify that with small businesses is pretty amazing. And when I look through the lens of a small business and the opportunity to do business with 875 members on a dime, no sales, it's about that initial negotiation. Again, for organizations that do want to scale, right? It's because we recognize scaling is not for all small businesses, but for those that do want an opportunity to be a part of a group dynamic that allows them the accessibility to that member base is an amazing opportunity. And that's not one that should be overlooked. And then from CPG, the ability to be able to implement a supplier diversity program that is so impactful across the nation I don't want to say it's an easy swoop because it's taken us time, right? But as we phase this out through New England and move it across the country, just how impactful that opportunity is remarkable.
I think it's taken this much time to do it right.
There you go. Yes.
I think that we, like I said at the beginning, we have a collection, and for lack of a better word, of diverse suppliers in our network. It's not a very large group, but it's a small group. But supplier diversity, I think, is more than just that. It's, we can say we have ABC Corporation or this veteran-owned business or this woman-owned business from Boston or Pennsylvania or New York. But if we're really not collecting data, or we're really not expanding that platform more than that to make those opportunities available for those businesses to be accessed by all the members, then we're really not doing our job, I don't think.
That's right. It's and it's almost for naught. Right. And it's interesting. So the method that we've been using is really based on a steering committee. So, pulling in some members and having them assist in the decision making and the rollout of what this program is going to look like, giving feedback on what Proximo's system will be. Because, again, sharing of data is an important, and it's an intimate, right? But knowing that CPG has no access to the data goes directly to the data organization, Proximo, and they manage it. But what it does do is it allows categorization review. How do you think about which next category to pursue for scaling some of those contracts? It's a phenomenal opportunity across the board. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to all this, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of questions from the audience once they watch you talking to us. What is your wish list, or what type of goods, services, or a combination of both are you hoping for or looking for?
Now, do you mean what type of vendors?
What type
Is
of
that what you
vendors?
mean?
What type of services would fit nicely with the GPO? What type of goods are you looking to buy from diverse vendors? Because
Sure.
I know they're going to start listening and they're going to start Googling your name. So
Sure,
this way
yeah.
you clarify it.
No, I think that's super helpful. I mean, someone I was introduced to earlier today from you folks in the insurance business, right? That's, often we get inquiries about stuff like that. We get, insurance. It's not just GPOs sometimes in the healthcare space are commonly or mistakenly sometimes too only associated with supplies, medical supplies, pharmaceutical, office supplies. Those are the big ticket items, right? So are there any diverse suppliers in those areas? Are they already working with some of those major suppliers like your McKessons and your Henry Schein Dentals and, office supplies like WB Mason or Staples?
Right.
Some of those companies I just mentioned are giving us and have started to give us their diverse supplier tier 2 spending already, that data. I've shared that with Lisa. But there's so many other areas that we'd be open to. There's so many different spend categories that we cover within our GPO. It's some of it now is becoming even more service related. It's not just supplies and commodities and items that they have to purchase to provide their continuity of service or care in the health centers. It's services, it's medical billing, it's revenue cycle management, it's things like that. There's so many things that it could be. And when our best vetting process to begin a vetting of a vendor, in whether they're a diverse supplier or not, is a referral from one of our members. Right. So sometimes we might not be thinking about a particular spend category until someone brings it up with us. And I might say, hey, we're working with this vendor doing this. And I might say, geez, we don't have that covered. We should talk to that person. We should talk to that person, and get them into our network.
Right.
And then we can begin to start to promote them. And we can, if someone else brings it up in our member network, we can make sure that we have that opportunity for them to talk to somebody.
I have a question for you, Lisa, since, you're very well-rounded about platforms and all that. So let's say now CPG will have this supply diversity program up and running. Mm-hmm. How can a supplier go and sign up to do business with them? What would be the process? I mean, I'm very familiar with pretty much Fortune 500 companies, how they do it.
Yeah,
so
same way.
How would this
Same way.
Same way.
Go
Okay.
right onto the website.
So
and-
will you require that this small supplier businesses be certified, or they can be self-certified?
I'm going to turn that
Rich.
question to Rich.
You know,
Yes.
that's been an ongoing question
It
I've
has
had
been.
with
I'm sure it has
that's
been.
an ongoing question I've had with Lisa. You know, because I'm trying to understand the certification process, and I understand it can be, for some, it seems a little bit complicated. It can be.
It's cumbersome,
Yeah.
to
It's
say the least.
cumbersome,
Yeah.
You know, some choose not to. I mean, I've met with some folks prior to even getting into this. There was one in particular I met with someone you might consider to be a diverse supplier,
Okay.
right? In the health monitoring space. You know,
wow.
not a supplier, like
Yep.
a supply, but a service,
A
more
service, yes.
service ended. And he told me he chose not to pursue that. It was not. It was for him. It was cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
And so, I'm on the fence on whether or not we should be worried about that right now. I think I would rather give opportunity to as many as possible. I would
love that.
also like
love
to be in a position to, with Lisa's help or others that she might recommend, how do we help people get certified? How do we make it easier for them?
Yeah.
And if there's a way to do that, then I think that we're providing even more service. you know.
Absolutely.
So,
That's right.
you know, for us, I mean, one of our ultimate goals, of course, is there going to be a business identified through all this that we're going to help scale from the local mom and pop nationally, where, you know, they're writing stories about this.
Yeah.
This,
Right.
You know, that's ultimately what one of our goals would be. Not just one, but it would be great to start with one.
Right.
So.
Nice,
Thank
right?
you. That was.
He is
I love
literally
that.
everything I said.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, he is, and then some. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the idea and the question of whether or not to have a self-certification or, as Rich said, to possibly kind of propose and assist, that's kind of for a later. And one of the things in the steering committee is that we're able to see a reflection of what the community centers and what his member base is looking for. So I'm going to say the verdict's still out on that one based on data, because we're seeing, you know, we have a steering committee of 15 that are driving this information, and what we're seeing so far is that self-certification is acceptable. The requirements in place for self-certification haven't been what you and I would deem to be standard practice in the industry. So, you know, maybe that's the first step, is that we influence the thought process around what self-attestation looks like. It's on the agenda, but it's not on this week's agenda. So, you know.
Fascinating. So, and if you ever come across that obstacle, you can talk to me. I can give you 20,000 different ways on how to solve that issue of
That's right.
self-certification. Yes.
That's wonderful.
Shame on plug.
Yeah.
But, you know, going back to how do they let us know that they're interested, Lisa's right. We have a website. We have a vendor application. They go on our website. They apply to be a vendor. I think on the application there's a question that says quite, you know, directly, are you a diverse supplier?
Yeah.
It's good for us to know that right up front.
Right.
When we do get into a contract situation with a vendor, supplier, we, in our contract management system, we have a notation for diverse supplier, yes, no. And we keep track of that, of course. And, you know, I want that to be more populated than it is now. But we try to make it as easy as possible for a vendor to apply to us. We get sometimes, you know, cold calls or cold email, inquiries.
Right.
What I usually do is I direct them to the website, no matter who it is.
Yep.
You know, sometimes they come to me or come to my team via referral.
Right.
And usually we follow up on those pretty quickly. And I just had one last week. A new supplier, she's going to be exhibiting at our Community Health Institute conference at the end of the month. She used to be a CIO at one of our health centers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and now she runs a fractional CIO business. And I asked her, I said, are you a certified supplier yet. I don't believe she is yet. I think she's thinking about pursuing that.
Nice.
But we're going to enter into a contract probably in the next week or so.
Nice.
But because that's a service that we don't have yet.
Right.
We're going to negotiate some pricing with her and try to figure out the best way to get her and her partner out to health centers starting in Massachusetts, but how can we get out? She worked at one of our health centers, I think Fenway, for over 20 years.
Oh,
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of experience,
Okay.
and that's what we look for usually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A fractional CIO, that's an interesting gig too.
Yeah, I'm just starting to learn
Ooh.
more about this fractional services type stuff, and it's the first time I've heard fractional CIO, and I
Yeah.
thought it was pretty
Same
cool.
here.
That's a
Yeah.
neat one
Same
though.
here.
It's a great idea.
Look at
Wow.
that. She
Yeah.
went in, she put 20 years, she learned as much as she could. Now she's on her own.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Interesting. I was a really surprised when I started talking to members and getting involved in conversations with your member base about how they track supplier diversity. Is it important to them? What are their thoughts about it? One of the things that kept coming up, and this came up in yesterday's steering committee meeting, we were talking about what's the importance of reporting on supplier diversity. And we didn't go too much into detail because we don't have enough data on it, but we spoke high level, and hearing the number of community centers that yes, no is the answer, where we've built out this system with Proximo so that they're asking for certification type. So you're going to be able to know, are they WBE, are they MBE, are they, right, et cetera, et cetera. That probably has started most of the excitement about using the system because it's the first insight these organizations are going to get in regards to truly tracking what a supplier diversity program looks like, where that intersectionality happens, and how to think about it. It was just the fact that you said it today, it was really the primary topic yesterday. So really excited to start rolling out. And what we measure grows. There's no other way to talk about data other than if you're not paying attention to things like the number of suppliers, right? So from a GPO perspective versus usually when you and I work with a client, it's what percentage of your what percentage of your spend is diverse.
Right.
That's not what I talked to Rich about, right? Rich is his role is to send and share contracts. So what number of diverse suppliers are there in that mix becomes part of it. So how to think about what to measure becomes really important. And we're going to start diving more and more into that's our next 3 weeks together is really about reporting and percentages. And
Yeah,
it's
and
gonna be fun.
I think once we get there and more established, we'll be able to easily we use Salesforce, Power BI, that type of reporting. The more information we get in terms of sales reporting, including the diverse suppliers, we'll be able to carve that out and be able to report on that as a percentage of our overall spend and savings.
And savings.
Which is important in the GPO world.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody before the meeting, and we were talking, and he it was a one-on-one conversation. He didn't want to speak publicly. And he was bringing up some of the same old questions that we've heard for years. Is this going to be more expensive? What's going to happen? Are we giving up quality in order to work with diverse suppliers? Maria and I often talk about those questions as sometimes borderline insulting, but that's right. But when we get past that borderline insulting, it comes to some real questions, right? Because at the end of the day, they're using a GPO. They want savings. They want ease.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be able to say the goal, the expectation is to put suppliers in place who are small and diverse for this program. You have an overall program that looks at all suppliers, but for this project that I'm helping you with, how do you create relationships with small and diverse suppliers and still track price and still track ease of purchase and still track all of the things that are vital and what you would anticipate getting from a GPO? And I was surprised by this question solely because when you think, again, this is where I have the 360, I get to think about CPG of course we're going to put contracts in place that are for savings and for ease, because to not have savings or ease is going to then create a situation where people aren't using your contracts. However, and there's a however, they also brought up the fact that that there are 2 office supply contracts that offered through CPG, and that oftentimes one is more expensive than the other, as we all see, and I don't even probably have to say the names, you know who they are.
Yep.
And that sometimes businesses price things differently than their peers for whatever their reasons are. That doesn't invalidate their offerings. So the expectation also cannot be that a smaller, diverse business that has 15, 20 line items of goods, that the requirement would be 100% savings next to the other a non-diverse supplier. That there has to be, part of being equitable is the ability to not offer as much savings as the next one. And we talked a little bit about ease of purchase and the elasticity of price, which is always one of my favorite conversations, right? Because elasticity of price or intentional redundancy, these are also a plan B of what suppliers you're putting in place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a big brushstroke, though, but for your member base, I would assume having that intentional redundancy would be really important for those moments. I'm not talking criticality of your most critical supplier base, but for those maybe moderately important suppliers that maybe you've run out of, I can't think of any, ink, paper, right? It's office supplies aren't critical until you're out of inventory.
Yes,
right?
that's true.
Right? Then all of a sudden they've moved up and they're a critical supplier.
Sure.
The need to have, or the desire to have, an intentional redundant supplier around something like paper is as impactful due to ease of purchase as it is to have savings, and how to balance and think about those.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That was one of my infamous 8-minute introductions that doesn't really have a question. But
No, when you first started that, the quality comment is a little off-putting.
yes.
And it's, we're not doing this because we're not going to be focused on cost savings still,
Right.
or quality. I had a conversation with a health center CEO. I've been at a Mass League sponsored CEO summit for the last 2 days to talk about some issues that are facing health centers right now, and specifically in Massachusetts. And it's across the country, but this group was specifically Massachusetts, is what I mean. And quality is still very important, but right now they're all focused on cost.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
focused on cost.
Rightly
Quality is
so.
important, but saving where they can is of utmost importance. So it puts the pressure on us, or gives us puts the pressure on us to make sure that we're getting the best contracts available.
Right.
To me, that also means including diverse suppliers and giving them opportunity to compete.
Right.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. That's the intentionality of this program, and it needs to be. I think it's the right way to go. And I think we'll see a lot of benefit out of it. Not just they will, but I think we will as well. And I think our members will.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. Maria, do you have any other questions about CPG, about GPOs?
Oh, just out of curiosity. So, in contracting, talking about contracting, do you have mostly sole sourcing or multiple sourcing contracting?
Multi.
And you find that multi works better than sole sourcing due to the pricing, or?
We do have sole source, but we don't. There's only 1 or 2 occasions that I can think of in our network that are exclusive, where we wouldn't add another one. But I'll give you an example that one of our spend categories, which is very important to health centers, language services. We worked with, and we still do, with a very reputably, nationally known language services provider. And but when I came on board, it was only that one. It wasn't an exclusive contract. And there was opportunity. People had come to us and asked, said, "Oh, are you working with this one? Are you working with that one?" And we would say, "Oh no, we're only working with company A." And what happened is we actually opened that up, and what I mean by open it up, we now have 4.
Nice.
But I think, and it's proved to be beneficial to our. I'm not saying it's going to be like that every time.
Right.
So we
right.
really have to vet that in terms of pricing and negotiations and all that. But some may offer a little bit different service than the others, or some health centers are focused on this one because they offer better service or ultimately better pricing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But in the per minute, that's how these language providers charge is usually per minute.
Yep.
And some of them need better translation in Spanish than they do in Haitian Creole or Cambodian or so it's so we look at all that and we created opportunity. We do have some sole source, but like I said, it's only 2 or 3.
Interesting. Yeah, I do believe in multiple sources because then again, you have that pool of diverse vendors, and that equals, not all the time, but most of the time, to better pricing, better services.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's adding that competition. I'd love to know, in that scenario, did the pricing from the original sole source
Change?
Change, please.
Maybe in 1 or 2 areas.
Okay.
We've also had situations in that type of example where they've health center or a member may switch, and then they switch back.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And it might be because of service, it might be because of cost, it might be it wasn't what they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. It doesn't mean the new one, B, C, or D, is not good or not effective. Just didn't work out for that particular health center.
That's right.
But now they can go back, and it gives opportunity still exists within the CPG framework.
Right.
Nice.
So that means that I think we're doing our job at that point, to trying to make sure that our health centers and our members have options. But we also during contract negotiations, like you said, Maria, that gives us an opportunity to try to drive price down with all of them.
Right.
Right. So
I'm good.
Okay,
that was absolutely fantastic.
So you have this other life that's pretty neat.
yeah.
You have a basketball life.
I do have a basketball
you
life.
tell.
I do have a basketball life. I, at a young age, 15, I think I was, didn't make the team in Andover. They had some pretty good teams. They've had pretty good teams over the years, too. And my grandfather was a longtime sports official in a couple of different sports in Maine, where my parents both grew up, and so it's in the blood. And I started refereeing youth basketball at 15 years old.
Awesome.
And
Wow.
Lisa and I were just sharing our ages earlier with the same age, and so I've been doing it a long time.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I still do as I'm able to. I still do. I referee high school and college basketball. I do Division III men's college basketball. Did Division II for a while, for about 10 years, but then stayed in Division III, and I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I have 4 children, 3 of my own and a stepson, and my youngest is pursuing a career in basketball. Not on the dark side, the referee side, on the coach's side. So he's had a great run himself. He'll be 24 in July.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
But he's not a head coach yet. Someday I hope he will be. He was a student assistant when he was at Keene State, and he's a GA, a graduate assistant at Bryant now in Rhode
Nice.
Island, and they just went to the NCAA tournament. So he's it's great. It's great to see, and it's something I really enjoy. I have it's really helped me in my business life. To be quite honest with you,
Can you connect that?
yeah. I mean, it's being around, first of all different types of people, and being able to communicate with all different types of people. So, and I don't mean just coaches, I mean other officials. Some of my closest friends, some of my best friends are referees. And it's the camaraderie that's built there, but it's also the mutual respect with coaches and players. I love interacting with players, and especially in the high school and college level. You know, it's really helped me in terms of that. You know, ever since I was young, you know, my parents were always, you know, raised us to be very accepting of all different types of people. So I think that's why the refereeing came naturally to me. So yeah, and it's something I enjoy. I know I'm going to miss it when I finally give it up, but I'm not ready to do that yet.
So one of the words I used about you shortly after, within the first couple of months of us talking, was judicious. And this is before I knew that you were a ref. But judicious comes to mind when you speak, because you seem to always, or you have for me, because again, we talk about a lot of stuff. You know, diversity brings up a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But you seem to always give a measurement and then give a measurement. And it just seems like you're comfortable, which I like when people are comfortable, because I use, you know, I don't know if you've watched the we talk a lot of words. We don't hide from feelings. We don't hide from what it all means, which, you know, is pretty intimate, and you have to be really okay with where you stand.
Right.
Oh, sure.
And I've really found that about you. You're judicious in how you slowly, you can see the process of where you're taking your thoughts until you land. And what I have found about you, which I really like, is when you land, it's done. There you are, and you're not running from that space. So I'd love to know what does that mean you have to retire from being a referee? Just too many runs up and down the court?
I think at the point where I'm not physically able to.
Okay.
You know, but I'm not even there. I'm not.
We're only
close.
58. I'm still playing solid pickleball. So
that's
you're
good. No, I have some very close friends that are doing it into their early mid 60s, and some of them in their late 60s, and you know, I don't know if I'll go that long, but you know, I've been blessed with no injuries and no ailments, so I feel pretty good about it. So, and I enjoy it too much. I mean,
what are you seeing different? So long time you've been doing this, 44 years.
Yeah.
So in 44 years, what are you seeing about the different generations of team players, especially high school level?
Yeah, I mean, I think the game has gotten a lot faster over the years. The kids are a lot more athletic, you know, the players are. I think in the men's and the women's game, I don't referee women's or girls basketball much, but what I see is, you know, that they're catching up, you know, and which I think is a great thing. You know, I think that, you know, people ask me, would you rather do a high school or college game? And often I say college. We take less heat sometimes. And college games can be very intense. Yeah. Right, for sure. But there's also in the high school environment, in the youth environment, building up into that is a little chaotic. Usually the parents and things like that, it's a lot more chaotic. You know, I mean, there's a lot more on the line, you know, in a lot of these, especially the college games, because some of those coaches, that's their job. You know, that's their life, you know. So, you know, they're all taking it very seriously. So we do too, you know, but we, you know, we want to have a good time doing it and doing it the right way. But those are some of the things I've noticed. You know, the parents can be a little bit crazier in youth sports overall. It's not just it's not just basketball.
It's not just basketball.
It's hockey, baseball, football. It's all over the place. You know? So I've seen that change over the years as well.
Well, it's no longer, it's a career, right? I mean, one of the things is about generational wealth that sits on the line for some of these kids, and you know, when I think about, you know, there's only one Kobe Bryant, right? There's only one Caitlin Clark, and but everybody thinks they're raising one.
Yeah, that happens,
right?
Yeah.
Little Johnny hits a couple of free throws, and you think, oh, he's gonna make it, and that's a lot, and
that's a lot of pressure on kids.
It's a lot of pressure, and nowadays too, unlike when I grew up in the 80s, 70s and 80s, I should say, the AAU mentality, travel basketball, all these, there's a tournament every weekend.
Right.
They're all over the place. And they're all, to put your kid through those programs, it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So, so that's how it's changed as well. A lot of camps and things for people to go to. There's a lot of camps for referees that want to move up as well. They have to go
interesting.
to those, Yeah. I mean, you don't see many 58-year-olds moving up into Division I and on TV like they were last week, which is perfectly fine, because I'm happy doing what I'm doing. So it's, but for us, most of us now, I should say, it's an avocation.
Yeah.
It's something that we do. I've been fortunate to work with people or for people that have been supportive of that. I've never let it affect my job.
Yeah.
Which I think is important. I have a very supportive spouse. My wife is fantastic. She understands it and appreciates the fact that it's important to me.
Right. Right.
I'm not a gambler. I don't golf. God forbid, my friends that'll see this, they're saying, thank God he doesn't golf. I mean, I golf a little bit, but I'm not good enough to golf with many of them, So I enjoy doing this. And I do it, and I also now have started to assign officials to different leagues and things like that.
Oh, that's neat.
Which I enjoy doing. During the off season, I do a lot of that, and I run a pretty large and very successful holiday tournament at Christmas time at Merrimack College, and sponsored by CommonWealth Motors. And it's a phenomenal thing. I used to go to it as a kid to watch, and and now for the last 15 years I've been running it with a friend of mine from North Andover. So
good for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and the sponsorships and the from it, and the revenue that's generated from it goes to scholarships for kids from the community.
Nice.
So and from each of the teams. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's amazing.
It sure is.
So as we are getting to time, Rich, I'd love to know what are, we ask a question, which is what are the challenges of point of entry into your industry? And I think you're unique. Again, I always talk about how unique your work gets to be, but to be the executive director of a GPO, are we asking what the point of entry into a GPO? I feel like we've touched that.
We have.
I am a procurement geek, as you know. I'd love to know, what do you think about the point of entry for procurement? Where is it a viable livelihood for people, and how to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I fell into it.
Yep.
I'm very grateful that I did fall into it, and because of my passion and love for community health centers, I wanted to continue that as a career for myself. So I have this great opportunity to work with people that I already knew.
Right.
We have a phenomenal team that you've met.
Yeah.
All kidding aside, out of the 10 of us, there's 2 of us in our 50s, and everybody else is in their 20s and early 30s. So, it's a pretty amazing, and it's a cool team. And they've all been there for a number of them, been there for 10, 15 years. So, right out of college or right out of school. So, but I think the point of entry, I think for procurement and for the GPO space is, certainly for someone. Do you mean for someone who wants to have that as a career?
We often point to Elijah. So here's Elijah. He's 18-year-old guy looking to start his career.
Yeah.
How would he, if he said procurement's my thing?
Yeah.
How does he get in? How does he get into it?
I think, I'll use an example. I have, when I think of this, I think of we have a young gentleman that works for us from Brockton. He's an intern, and he's from, he goes to Bryant. He's going to be, I think he's just finishing his sophomore year. His name is Andre. Phenomenal young guy. And seasonally, for the last 2 years since we first engaged him in the business, he comes back during holiday breaks and during, I think those are the ways to get into it and learn the business.
Yeah.
I would encourage. We're going to be looking again to add an additional intern. probably locally, whether it be one of the Boston schools, BU or
Northeastern?
Northeastern, exactly. So but we're that's how I would suggest, and it's working out. Whether Andre decides to stay in that, but I think he's picking up a great skill set.
Yeah.
And he's getting a familiarity too with community health centers,
That's
which I
amazing.
think is kind of cool. So any way we can introduce, my feeling is any way I can introduce a young person to working in community health centers or for community health centers, it's a plus. That's the way I look at it. So this is just one way of doing that. I think that, and from a GPO perspective, I think that there's more that we could do in the future in helping our members with their procurement process. It's something that you and I have talked about.
Yep.
How can we do that, and how can we add that to our menu of services at CPG?
Yeah.
How can we do a better job of helping them, and how can we do a better job of helping ourselves negotiate better contracts?
Right.
Overall,
Overall.
whether it be a diverse supplier or otherwise.
That's right. That was great. Thank you for that answer. That was terrific.
Rich, thank you so much for this presentation, for being agreed to be here. I enjoyed our talk, and I learned quite a lot. So thank you for that. So, Miss Lisa,
Yes.
based on the conversation we had, what are your takeaways from this conversation?
So I have a few. So I think my first takeaway, and I can't pretend that I don't know about CPG as they are a client, but I think my takeaways are to all businesses, find your GPOs, find a list of GPOs that you are supportive of the industry with that they currently supply. So for CPG, it would be community health centers. And I want to bring note to that. That's indirect, that's medical, that's there's a lot of direct material here also. But sign up or attempt to get on the radar of a GPO. What that's going to do is bring you to a wider breadth of potential sales, and that is why you're in business, is so that you're getting sales. So look to that. That would be my first. My second is how amazing to be able to be so impactful to communities.
Absolutely.
And I think that speaks to GPOs. I think that speaks to community health centers. And I think the collaboration that Rich has brought together to support community-based initiatives, i.e. small and diverse businesses, I think that is exciting and impactful. I think looking and thinking about basketball, being a ref, I think I didn't know that there was an education to it, but it makes so much sense now that he's said that, and I just kind of applying it into some other conversations I've had. I think we often talk to Elijah about things that are waiting for him as as career paths, and I think being a referee, having that as a you don't have to make the basketball team. There are other options for how you can be involved in sports through reffing, through journalism, etc. Those are exciting things, and you can still be impactful that way. So lots to take away. I really enjoy working with Rich, and I enjoy the things that we get to talk to, because I like to talk procurement, I like to talk supply diversity. Those are my takeaways.
It's amazing.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much, Rich, for coming in today and making the trek down to Marshfield. The beaches are waiting for you this summer. So,
That's right.
so we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoy our guest, Rich. World of knowledge here. A lot of conflict resolution coming from this side. I learned about basketball as well, a little bit of basketball. It was really an incredible guest. So thank you for that, Rich. I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. Let's continue to amplify diverse voices and foster meaningful dialogues. Until then, this is Maria. Thank you.
I'm Lisa. We're the Diversity Duo. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.